Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional from Hong Kong, Priya Bhasker. Priya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Priya is the founder of KidsMustRead.com. She's an ex-board member of the American Women's Association Hong Kong, and she's a collaborator of SP Connect. Priya is also a reading coach, an ex-board member of AWA, and the ex-co-chair of AWA WISE. So, Priya, before we talk about Kids Must Read, tell me about your own, in your words, the multi-hyphenated journey.
My journey has been multi-hyphenated because I've had to reinvent myself so many times. Every time I think to myself that things are going good, things are going well, I suddenly find that change happens and I have to literally reinvent myself and look at my life differently. I started off by being a banker, and I quit that when I had my first child, and decided to be a stay-at-home mom. I was very happy in that role, but I also wanted to do something else. So I volunteered with my school library. And there I would observe children and realize that they were not reading. I was observing what makes them read, what makes them not read. I also did creative writing courses at the same time. And all this helped me to set up reading clubs for children in Mumbai. And we also set up a reading program for the same school that my children were studying at. And this was going really well. We had 5 kids. We moved on to 75 kids at the end of 3 years when my husband said he had to move to Hong Kong. So, I came here and I was feeling extremely low. I was missing friends and family in Bombay. I was missing what I used to do. And I didn't quite know where to start and what to do. So I did what was easiest. I went to my school. I volunteered there. I did fundraising for them. And then, the Hong Kong chapter of the American Women's Association invited me to come on board. And so I volunteered with them to fundraise for them. We did this by kind of curating and coming out with events. And I've organized something like, I think, 35 plus events with the help of a team of volunteers. And this was going really well till COVID struck, and all events came to a complete standstill. When that happened and we were all huddled at home, I decided that this was the opportunity I needed to focus on my passion project, which was Kids Must Read. I set up a website by the same name called KidsMustRead.com. I wanted to make this a social enterprise, so all resources on the website were free. And more recently, drawing on my experience with the AWA and AWAYs, I am creating and designing and facilitating workshops for expat women in Hong Kong. By collaborating with other experts here in Hong Kong. So in brief, I think that basically every time I see change happening, I look at it as an opportunity, to learn something new, to do something new, and, maybe add another hyphen to that multi-hyphenated title of mine.
What a great response. Thank you. And, I try and understand when you said, your husband was transferred. I know my wife and my children have been through exactly the same thing. Every time I was moved somewhere, they would pack their bags and move along with me and restart. So it is a difficult one. And I am grateful to a lot of, women who have supported their husbands in such an amazing way. But let's talk a little bit about Kids Must Read now, Priya. How does Kids Must Read uniquely approach the encouragement of both reading and writing?
So that's a good question. Kids Must Read does this in different ways. The first thing is that when I started off wanting to talk about books on a digital platform, I had the option of doing a blog.
Yeah.
And I think you will relate to this, Ashutosh, because in your book, The Brand Called You talk about being unique and bringing something unique to the table and being authentic about it. I wanted to do something different as well. I didn't want to just write about books. So I said that, I set out to solve a problem that I faced as a mother, and I saw other mothers facing around me, which is that children were not reading the same books in the same way. Children have different interests. They have different reading abilities. So how do you make sure that the book is the right one for a child? So I designed a custom-built search engine for my book, for my website. And there, if you put in the reading level of the child and the age of the child, it then generates a list of books which are tailored for that child. Second thing that we do is that we believe in educating parents on how to get their children to read. And we do that through workshops. When we tell parents that these are the ways that you can help children read, and these are the challenges that you will face, I believe that parents in turn can use those learnings to build the reading habit in children. Thirdly, at an institutional level, I believe in giving back, just like you. And we've set up reading programs for a school in Delhi, which is basically, a school for underprivileged children. We're also in the process of setting up a second reading program for that school. So, these are the three ways in which I think Kids Must Read uniquely approaches. These are the three ways in which Kids Must Read uniquely approaches how to build reading habits in children. In terms of writing itself, in this age of AI, where a chat box can write a very decent essay for a child, I believe that it is even more important right now to help our children to read, because good readers make good writers. When you read, you develop a sense of empathy for the protagonist. You develop knowledge. You also look at it, you look at the tools that the author has used to write a good book. So it helps you to think critically. It helps you to draw on technical skills of writing. And this in turn, helps children to become better writers.
Well said. So I must remember to introduce my little 2-year-old granddaughter to Kids Must Read. She lives in Singapore with my son. But if there is something, we'll reach out to you. So tell me, what challenges have you faced, Priya, in encouraging reading among children? And how have you handled some of these challenges?
I think the most obvious challenge, which we see all around us, is that children are constantly on devices these days.
Correct.
Right? So they are either engaged in social media or they're engaged in gaming. There is no child today who doesn't do one of this in some way or the other. And the fact is that the companies behind these gaming, games and social media platforms do this very deliberately, right? They manipulate dopamine cycles of children to give them pleasure at regular times. So when children are on these machines, it's a pleasurable activity for them. Reading, on the other hand, is like going to the gym. You have to work out to stay healthy. And it's, for some people, it's not a pleasurable activity because there is work to do. Your brain has to exercise. It becomes stronger, but the brain has to exercise to read. So if a child is given a choice between reading and between watching something on YouTube, it is obvious what he is going to do. The second challenge that I face is that I think parents underestimate the importance of reading aloud to children. You said you have a grandchild who is 2 years of age. It is critical for parents at that stage to start reading aloud to their children. Because by reading aloud to children, it's almost like reading a book. Even if a child hears those words, they're forming images in their mind, and it's building that sense of, color and texture and story in their heads, which allows them to read. The thing that happens, however, is that the minute the child becomes an independent reader, we as parents give up on reading aloud to our children. And I would urge parents to not do that. I would request them to continue reading aloud to the children till the time the child allows it. Simply because, I was reading aloud to my child till he was 12 years of age. And I believe that that is one of the key reasons why he is the reader that he is today. Even though he's a boy, he has many distractions, he loves gaming, but his reading continues. The third challenge which people face is that they're not aware. There's lack of awareness about the quality of the simply amazing and fabulous children's literature available to children today. Parents don't know about this. They might know about the Wimpy Kids. We grew up reading Enid Blyton's, Nancy Drews, and smattering of classics, right? But today you have diverse variety of authors and genres and these simply amazing books that stand on their own, on their own merit. And if you read them, you don't need to read an adult book, but people are not aware of this.
Right.
And not to pitch, but this is exactly the problem that KidsMustRead is trying to solve by allowing parents easy access to book recommendations, which they can then present to their child.
Very well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Priya, how do you think reading habits in children are evolving, given the incredible availability of digital technology to them?
So, Ashutosh, it's a question that really deeply resonates with me because we see it. I mean, we don't need studies to bear out what we see, but we see children all the time on electronics. But there are studies that have been done. For example, the National Literacy Trust conducted a survey in 2019, and they found that this generation of children is reading less than any previous generation before them. 26% of the children read.
Wow.
Similarly, there was another survey. I think it was Scholastic that conducted this survey, where they found that children's reading peaks at the age of 9 years. 9 years in the US today. Okay, after that, there's a steep dive.
Wow.
And I believe that happens because, 10, 11, 12 is the age when parents give the child a smartphone. They do the best of intentions to keep the children safe. They do it because the child is saying, I feel peer pressure. Everybody else has a phone. I need to have a phone too. And they feel that a phone is one way in which children are, connected socially to their friends, and everyone is doing it. So why not then? The minute you give a phone, I think then reading levels truly drop among children. So it is a big challenge that we face today. Digital media has decimated reading habits in children. And the other thing that happens, and I think you would have noticed it in your life as well, is that we now have shorter attention spans.
Correct.
We have lost the ability of reading deeply and quietly, right? So we do this, we want to get the gist of the information rather than read in depth and really try to get to the bottom of the issue. We skim the article to get what we need.
Right.
And this in turn, if this happens to us with our fully developed cognitive functions, imagine what it does to a child whose brain is still developing, right? So their reading habits are also changing dramatically because of all these changes.
Very well said. And, as you were telling me about this, I was just thinking now every article on digital media says 3-minute read, 4-minute read. They're actually telling you how much time you have to spend on it. But great response. Thank you.
Yeah.
My other question, Priya, and you've spoken a little bit about it, of how important it is for parents to read. But what role do parents and educators play in your own programs? And how can they best support their children's literary journey?
So parents and caregivers, in this case, educators, both teachers and schools, play a critical role in building the reading habit in children today. When I was young, we pretty much didn't have too many activities to do, right? So if you were bored during your summer holidays, I remember having this stack of Enid Blytons that I would read, and I was just reading the whole day, and it was natural for me. Now what has happened, because of the distractions that we have, unless a parent or the teacher and the school makes an effort
Mhm.
to build the reading habit in a child,
Mhm.
it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Because children have so many distractions these days that they would rather do that than read a book. So it is very imperative that parents and educators participate in the reading process and
Mhm.
building reading habit in children. They can do this, as I said, by reading aloud to kids, which is very important. They can do that by constructing libraries. Schools
Mhm.
have libraries, and the parents could have home libraries with, you know, with a mix of books. Books which are popular, like Geronimo Stilton's and Wimpy Kids, and books which are good for children to read. For example, the books that I curate. It is important to have this balance. Parents, and it's also important to have quiet time that you build into a day for the child to read. And
Mhm.
parents can do that by role modeling reading behavior, right? So they
Mhm.
could read themselves, they could sit with the children and say, I'm going to read for 30 minutes. Why don't you do that also?
Mhm.
So, these are ways in which I think parents and educators can help children
Very
read.
well said. And you just talked about curation, which leads me to my next question. How do you curate the book selections for kids must read? And how do you keep your selection diverse and inclusive?
So, just to share with you, um, I read every single book that goes on the website.
Wow.
I do not depend on anybody else's
Mm.
reviews and opinions because, you know, I believe that a child is committing 3 hours of their time to me when they're reading a book, and I deeply respect the time and I respect
Mm.
that trust.
Mm.
So, I myself, have a technical background in writing. I have done several courses on creative writing, both face to face and online. This gives me an idea of how the author is thinking. It puts
Mm.
me in their shoes. It allows me to see the technical finesse of the book.
Mm.
So if there's a nice turn of phrase or some unique theme that the author has used or a plot device the author has used, I'm able to see that.
Mm.
Then there is the other side of it, which is that if a book is, uh, you know, displays violence in an age inappropriate way. It is racist in some shape or form, even if it's a classic, and it is misogynistic, or anti-diversity, then I will not recommend that,
Mm.
definitely. And, over a period of time, I have learned to trust my own instincts.
Mhm.
And I have learned that the book that appeals to me emotionally is a book that will also appeal to a child.
Mm.
So these are the ways in which I curate my books. And because I only put up books that
Mm.
I read a lot of diverse books by diverse
Right.
authors.
Mm.
So that feeds into, the book selections and making the books extremely diverse and different.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, Priya, I'm going to move to another section of my conversation with you, which is, your design, your ability to design workshops for English-speaking women in Hong Kong.
That's right.
My first question is, what motivated you to start designing workshops for English-speaking women in Hong Kong?
Well, when I came here, Ashutosh, um, I felt completely lost in Hong Kong. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know
Mm.
what to do. And I was used to being a busy person and doing a
Mm.
lot of things. Um, when I joined the AWA and I became co-chair of AWAYs, which is the professional women's wing of the AWA, I met many women, expat women like me, who were equally lost. And I realized that my problems were the problems that they faced, and I could really understand them. So I leveraged that understanding of the problems. I leveraged the knowledge that I had about organizing events and marketing and all of that to then create, design, and facilitate workshops for English speaking women. English, because Cantonese is the spoken language for a majority of the population here,
Mm.
and I don't speak Cantonese,
Mm.
so it was a natural sort of um, segue to having these workshops for
Mm.
English women,
Mm.
expat women in Hong Kong.
And what are some of the unique challenges that you address, uh, when through these workshops?
So our workshops are, I won't say workshops, I've done just one workshop,
Mhm.
but the aim is to address two areas. One is a mindset area, for women especially, and the other is skill building.
Mhm.
So we first worked on a mindset workshop, which was titled Reinventing Yourself with Passion and Purpose.
Mhm.
And there we spoke to the woman saying that, you're facing change. You might be someone who's an empty nester. You might be someone who's recently come to Hong Kong. Maybe you're recently married and you find that your professional journey has come to a halt. How do you reinvent yourself?
Mhm.
Why not lean into a passion that you felt before? Why not do things very differently? These are the advantages you have in Hong Kong, right?
Mhm.
So kind of went into that,
Mhm.
and we explained to women that this is what they could do in Hong Kong.
Mhm.
Uniquely, I think we address the issue of networking, because that is one of the key challenges women face in Hong Kong, because
Mhm.
when they come here, they don't know whom to contact for jobs, or
Mhm.
even set up a company. So we teach them how to network.
Okay.
We give them resources about
Mhm.
organizations that help in networking in Hong Kong,
Mhm.
either generally or to the space that's unique to them.
Well said. And my last question to you, Priya, what advice would you have for so many women looking to transition from their careers and start anew in Hong Kong?
Um, the thing is that Hong Kong is an amazing place.
Yep.
It is gorgeous geographically, weather-wise, and everything. But most importantly, it is
Mhm.
very supportive of
Mhm.
anybody who wants to start an entrepreneurship, or anybody who wants to do something new in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
We have the advantage here of, visas. Spouses are allowed to work in Hong Kong without any problems at all. Uh, and, I think it's a very important factor for women to go out to work, is that we're allowed to hire helpers
Mhm.
here in Hong Kong, right? And that is also extremely critical and important. Given all these advantages that women actually have here, one thing that I would tell them is that if, for example, you're looking for a job, you might be asked to step back a little and take a cut in your a haircut in your
Mhm.
designation. Maybe go for it, because while you might have to step back a little, you can build on your career
Mhm.
eventually if you're good at it.
Mhm.
Secondly, lean into the change. Maybe you have a passion which
Correct.
you've never explored. I mean, maybe start something different with it, just the way that I did,
Right.
right? And maybe find a completely different career path. But
Mhm.
most importantly, for people who are in, expat women in Hong Kong or Singapore, is that they need to build a personal brand. It
Correct.
speaks to your passion as well. And this is very important, because, you have to go beyond your job description. You have to, create a sense of being an expert in your field. You have to be well connected with people. So maybe doing it digitally is a
Mhm.
wonderful way of
Mhm.
making connections, especially possibly in countries that you might go to in the future. So
Mhm.
that when again you find yourself uprooted, and which happens to, this kind of population, you at least are not at base zero. You can
Correct.
start off on a solid level of contacts that you have, of having established yourself as an
Mhm.
expert, and leverage that to start maybe the same thing or something totally different in the
Mhm.
new place that you're working.
Mhm. Mhm.
So this is what I would, advise women
Very
who
well said. And on that note, Priya, and your amazing advice of how important it is for women to build their personal brand, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own multi-hyphenated journey. It's so amazing how much flexibility so many people like you have had in supporting careers of your spouses.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for speaking to me about Kids Must Read. I think I've learned many new things, and I'm certainly going to become a subscriber to Kids Must Read for my granddaughter and tell my son and daughter-in-law to do the same. Thank you for talking to me about design workshops that you do for women and how important it is, your support is to help women settle down in Hong Kong. Thank you again,
Thank you,
and good
Josh.
luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.